Tales from the Mythos.
The Impossible City. Chapter 1. Randolph Carter's Warning. Randolph Carter had been Albert Albright's best friend since childhood. They had grown up together in Arkham, inseparable, as close as brothers in every way except blood. Through the years, they had shared secrets, adventures, and the pursuit of knowledge, both drawn to the mysteries of the world, like moths to a flame. Where Albert pursued scholarship and scientific rigor, Randolph had always been the dreamer, the wanderer, the one who glimpsed truths beyond the veil of reality. And now, Randolph Carter was dying. Albright had seen men broken before, men who had stared into the abyss and had it stare back, but never like this. Carter lay rigid in his hospital bed, his eyes glimmering with a faint, wrong light, a flickering iridescence that seemed to shift in ways Albright's mind refused to process. His breath was ragged, his fingers twitching in some unseen, unknowable rhythm. "They sent us to map it," Carter rasped, his voice raw, as if he had spent weeks screaming into empty air. "It's alive, Albright. Not a ruin, not a tomb, a place that dreams. It took the others, rewound them, swallowed them, like the dunes swallow footprints." Albright frowned. Rewound? Carter's breath hitched. He turned his head, his two wide eyes locking onto Albright. His face twitched in something that was not quite a smile. "They're still there, Albright. I heard them. I saw them. But they weren't them anymore." He shuddered violently, something alien and fractured lurking behind his pupils. "It's the Migo. They don't kill. They rewind. They restart." Albright felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "I have to go." Carter laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Then you've already lost." Chapter 2. The Journey to the Impossible City. Albright's team, including himself, numbered 4. Stella Fontaine, a brilliant scientist with an expertise in chemicals and reactions, though her knowledge extended far beyond that. She had spent years studying eldritch substances, pushing the boundaries of human understanding to prepare for what lay beyond. Jacob Peters, a physician and psychologist from Warsaw, Poland. He had treated men broken by the horrors of the mind and had seen madness take hold where reason once lived. His presence on this expedition was no accident. Someone had to know how to handle what they might find. Sandra Atkinson, a British archaeologist with an obsession for ancient secrets. She had spent her life seeking forbidden knowledge, and if the Impossible City held truths lost to time, she would find them. The journey took them by plane, by car, and then by camel, across the featureless vastness of the Arabian desert. Their camels were secured in advance by Fatima Safar, an old acquaintance of Albert's. She had been conducting a separate investigation not far from their landing site, and Albert had trusted her implicitly to arrange their transportation. When they arrived at the remote trading post, Fatima was waiting for them, her red headscarf fluttering in the wind, arms crossed as she studied them with a knowing smirk. "You're late," she teased, as Albert dismounted from the car. "I was starting to think you'd gotten lost already." "Had to make sure we were properly sleep-deprived before embarking on something foolish," Albert replied, shaking her hand. "I assume you have the camels?" "Of course." She gestured behind her, where several camels stood, already saddled and ready. "Though I should warn you, they are as stubborn as the people riding them." Jacob eyed the animals with suspicion. "I've never trusted a beast with longer legs than me." Sandra smirked. "You don't trust many things, do you, Jacob?" "I trust that we are making a terrible decision," he muttered. Stella walked up to a particularly large camel, staring it down as if trying to decipher its chemical makeup. "What do they eat out here?" she mused aloud. Fatima chuckled. "Hope, mostly. They'll eat whatever they can find, but they'll always act as if they're starving." Albert finished checking the supplies and turned to Fatima. "How's your own investigation going?" Fatima's smile faded just slightly. "The usual, things that shouldn't exist, happening in places they shouldn't be." She gave him a long look. "Whatever you're looking for in that city, be careful. It's been hidden for a reason." After making final preparations, they mounted up and rode out into the desert. But the desert was not empty. The dunes shifted like living things, curling and reshaping themselves behind them, as if erasing their passage. The sun distorted at the edges, smearing across the sky like a half-forgotten dream. Then they saw it. The city was simply there, a vast and silent necropolis of blackened stone, where no maps claimed anything should exist. They all saw it, yet the camels did not flinch, as if it weren't there at all. Sandra exhaled sharply. How could no one know about this? "The Migo allowed it," Stella whispered. "That's why we see it." Albright nodded slowly. "We go forward." They stepped into the city, and the world changed. Chapter 3. The Descent. They moved between the titanic ruins, the immense black stones fitted together with impossible precision, their surfaces covered in weather-worn carvings. The air hung thick with an oppressive silence, as though the city itself were holding its breath. The buildings around them loomed impossibly high, their facades cracked and worn by centuries, perhaps millennia, of exposure, yet somehow untouched by time. Some bore carvings so deep and intricate that the figures within them seemed almost to move beneath the flickering lantern light. "There's something about the architecture," Sandra muttered, running her gloved hand along a row of hieroglyphic-like symbols etched into the stone. "It's too intentional." "What do you mean?" Albert asked. Sandra gestured at the buildings around them. Ruins decay, things collapse, but these... She glanced upward at a tower with no windows, only spiraling engravings that made her dizzy to look at. These structures feel like they've been deliberately preserved. Jacob adjusted his satchel, scanning their surroundings with a frown. Or they were abandoned by something that doesn't experience time the way we do. The passageways between the buildings grew narrower as they pressed deeper into the city. The air changed, thickening, as if the very atmosphere was pushing back against them. "The air pressure is increasing," Stella murmured, narrowing her eyes. "Not naturally. Something is affecting it." Albert felt the same pressure, a presence, an unnameable force pressing into his skull, urging him to turn back. They kept walking. The carvings changed the deeper they went. The early ones had been almost human, though distorted, depictions of tall, robed figures gathered beneath strange constellations. But as they descended toward what looked like a main thoroughfare, the images shifted. The humanoid figures began to warp, their limbs elongating, their heads becoming bulbous and wrong. Some had chitinous growths or clustered, multifaceted eyes, and others bore strange apparatuses on their backs, devices that, in some eerie way, resembled mechanical wings. "They changed," Sandra whispered, stopping before a particularly large carving. Jacob's expression darkened. Or they were changed. Ahead of them, the city tilted downward, its structures leading toward a vast black fissure in the earth. Albert swallowed hard. He could feel it now, something below them, waiting, patient and terrible, beyond comprehension. They descended. Chapter 4. Beneath the city, the descent into the depths of the city was slow and deliberate, their lanterns casting long, flickering shadows against the tunnel walls. The stone steps beneath them were uneven, their surfaces smoothed by time or something else entirely. As they moved downward, the air thickened, dense with an almost tangible weight pressing against their skin. The passageway narrowed, its walls carved with more of the strange symbols they had seen above. Unlike the murals in the upper ruins, these were sharper, less like records of history and more like warnings. This writing, Sandra ran her fingers over a jagged line of inscriptions, frowning. It's different than the ones above. How so? Albert asked. She tilted her head. Up there, the carvings were about change, transformation. But these, she stepped back, eyes scanning the long, sprawling text. These are begging for something to stop. Jacob glanced at the markings, his fingers twitching slightly. They're prayers. Please. He exhaled sharply. Someone wanted whatever was happening here to end. The tunnel walls began to twist. What had once been a clear, descending path had become something more organic, the passage warping subtly, as if it had been shaped by hands that did not understand human geometry. The architecture changed, Stella observed, adjusting her lantern's glow. This was not just a city, it was a transition point. For what? Sandra asked. Jacob's voice was low. Something that wasn't meant to exist in our world. The passage opened into a vast chamber, and all of them stopped. At the center of the cavern stood a massive stone monolith, covered in alien inscriptions that pulsed faintly, as though the stone itself was alive. Surrounding it were fragments of technology, wires, tubing, rusted metal, and glass containers filled with dark, opaque substances. The air smelled sterile and metallic, a scent Stella recognized instantly. This is recent, she whispered, stepping forward. Not ancient. This is modern. Sandra knelt by a discarded metal instrument, running her fingers over its surface. Someone was experimenting here. Jacob turned toward the far end of the cavern, where another passage stretched downward into deeper darkness. His voice was barely above a whisper. They never stopped. Albert tightened his grip on his lantern and motioned for them to continue. And so they did, into the deepening blackness of the impossible city. Chapter 5. The Laboratory of the Mi-Go. The tunnel sloped downward at an unnatural angle, the walls narrowing as if the city itself was pressing in around them. The deeper they went, the less their lanterns seemed to cut through the gloom. It wasn't just darkness. It was something else entirely, something that resisted illumination. Then, suddenly, the passage widened into an enormous chamber. They stepped into a place that should not exist. Rows of glass cylinders stretched endlessly before them, each standing atop a mechanical base inscribed with alien sigils that pulsed with a dim, otherworldly glow. The chamber hummed with a low mechanical vibration, a sound that seemed to burrow into their skulls rather than pass through their ears. Inside the cylinders, shapes floated, organic, twitching things, suspended in a thick, gelatinous fluid. The air smelled of chemicals, of preservation, stagnation, and something grotesquely alive. Stella recognized the scent immediately, her breath catching. "This is a laboratory," she whispered. "They were keeping something here." Sandra stepped forward, peering into one of the cylinders. Her face was pale, her fingers shaking as she traced the metallic base. "There's something written here," she said, voice hoarse. Albert lifted his lantern. The inscription on the metal was not human, yet the moment he looked at it, he understood. The name etched into the base was Sandra Atkinson. A long silence stretched between them. Then Sandra's breath hitched. Her own name. She stumbled back, shaking her head violently. No, 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 this isn't real. This isn't... Her voice broke into a choked sob, her whole body trembling. She turned to Albert, her eyes wild with desperation. Albert, tell me you see something else. Tell me I'm wrong. Albert couldn't speak. Sandra whimpered, staggering toward the cylinder, pressing her hands against the glass. Inside, the floating, pulsing brain twitched, its gelatinous prison rippling in response to her voice. Sandra let out a ragged scream. No! No! This can't be me! I'm right here! I'm right here! She slammed her fists against the glass, over and over, sobbing hysterically, clawing at her own arms as if trying to wake herself up. Albert reached for her, but then a sharp inhale from behind them. Jacob's breath hitched in his throat. His hands twitched violently, his entire body locking up. His eyes had landed on another cylinder. His own name was written on it. His lips parted, but no words came. He let out a strangled sound, his breathing turning erratic. Then, as if something inside him snapped, he fell to his knees. Please, he cried. No. His hands clenched into fists against his temples, his eyes darting around the room, desperate for an answer that did not exist. I'm here. I'm here. I'm not. His voice cracked, his shoulders shaking. Albert took a slow step toward him. Jacob. Jacob whipped around, his face streaked with tears, his voice a guttural, broken thing. Albert, please, help me. Get me out of here. His voice dissolved into desperate sobbing, his hands clutching his own chest, as if expecting to feel an emptiness there. He rocked back and forth, pleading, begging, his voice growing smaller and smaller. Then Stella exhaled shakily. There's more. Albert turned, his pulse thundering in his ears. Stella moved numbly to the next row of cylinders, her steps slow, as if wading through thick water. Her fingers brushed dust from another inscription. She stopped. She stared. And then she let out a low, guttural moan, her knees buckling beneath her. Her name. Her own name. Her breath hitched violently, her entire body convulsing as if the knowledge itself was killing her. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her fingers dragging uselessly over the surface, her breath fogging up the smooth surface as she begged under her breath. No, please no. I don't want this. I don't want this. Albert, help me. Albert stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. He could hear Sandra still wailing, Jacob's choking sobs, and now Stella's trembling whispers, each voice breaking, collapsing under the weight of the impossible truth. Then, his eyes landed on another cylinder. A name he knew. Albert Albright. His stomach turned inside out. His pulse stopped. The truth crashed down upon him, crushing, final, inescapable. His own brain floated before him, and the shadows moved. Chapter 6. The Rewinding. The Me-Go did not kill. They rewound. The memories slipped away in fragments, shattering like glass, yet Albert could still feel the shape of them, the echoes of what he had understood only moments before. This wasn't an expedition. This wasn't an exploration into the unknown. This was a cycle. Sandra, Jacob, Stella. They had been here before. They had screamed. They had begged. They had stood in this very spot and learned the same truth. And then the Me-Go had reset them, sent them back out, erased their memories. And Albert had been here before too, just as he was now, just as he always had been. The city was not a place. It was a mechanism. It was a loop, a perfect eternal rewinding of minds, of bodies, of purpose. Albert tried to hold on to the revelation, to fight the process, but it was too late. The knowledge unraveled, The timeline folded inward. His thoughts collapsed. The city fell away. The cylinders faded. The Migo blurred into shifting, flickering shapes. Epilogue. Albert opened his eyes. He was standing in the hallway of Miskatonic University Hospital. The scent of antiseptic burned in his nostrils, the quiet hum of gas lamps flickering along the walls. The door ahead of him was open just a crack, leading into a dimly lit hospital room. Albert knew this place. His stomach twisted. His thoughts wavered, something slipping through his fingers, dissolving before he could grasp it. Inside, a man lay in the hospital bed. His body was thin, pale, weak. His eyes glowed faintly with an unnatural flickering light. Randolph Carter. Albert exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Then he stepped forward and pushed open the door.
If this tale stirred something in the dark corners of your mind, don't let it end here. Like the video, leave a comment, share it with those who dream strange dreams, and subscribe so you don't miss what's still to come.